has landed herself a new, very high-profile position, and I've been wondering when this was going to happen. I knew at some point, somewhere, with some miscellaneous media outlet, Caitlin Clark would get a gig, and now we know where that gig's going to be, when that gig's going to be, and who that gig's going to.
Caitlin Clark just landed a position that nobody saw coming. Not with ESPN, not with Turner, with NBC Sports on their flagship basketball music program. And the timing of this announcement tells you everything about where the power really sits in women's basketball right now. Because while the WNBA Players Union is threatening to sit out the 2026 season over CBA negotiations, the league's biggest star just signed a deal that bridges her straight into the offseason with zero interruption to her brand momentum.
Oh, I don't know how much. There's no CBA right now. And this, of course, would run through, let's see, at least May, in theory. I don't know. We don't have any dates that stretch that far yet. I still think they're going to get the CBA.
Frauing Power. February 1st. That's when Caitlin Clark makes her debut as an NBC analyst, right before the Lakers and Knicks tip off at Madison Square Garden. Then she's back March 9 for Thunder versus Knicks, two of the highest profile NBA matchups you can get. And they're putting a WNBA player who's never done TV analysis before on the desk with Hall of Famers. That's not a trial run. That's a statement about her drawing power.
If there is a new CBA agreed upon before then, again, I've told you guys, I've got the over-under on February 15th. I just have a feeling. That's just my gut feeling that when push comes to shove, again, I believe a lot of players.
Here's what makes this fascinating. The WNBA's collective bargaining agreement expires in October 2025. Players are already talking about sitting out if they don't get their demands met. But Caitlin Clark just secured income that carries her through May 2026. Whether the WNBA season happens or not, she's got USA basketball commitments in March for World Cup qualifiers. She's got this NBC gig running through the spring, and she's building leverage that has nothing to do with what the Players Union decides.
We want to sign the deal. But that long wait doesn't mean Caitlin Clark has been away from the game. In fact, she notably suited up for USA basketball training camp in December, has expressed her dedication for participating in all-team USA events with FIBA World Cup looming in September and qualifiers taking place in March. So she has and will get the needed reps before finally taking the floor again with the Fever. In the meantime, she will be keeping busy.
NBC didn't just hire her to talk basketball. They hired her because she moves needles. Sunday Night Football is their crown jewel, and Football Night in America is the pre-game show that sets the table. Now they're launching Basketball Night in America with the exact same format. And Caitlin Clark is joining Maria Taylor, Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and Reggie Miller on the panel. That's not padding a roster. That's putting her name alongside legends because they believe she belongs there.
Wow. So this would be akin to, they have Sunday Night Football, and it starts with a pregame show called Football Night in America. I didn't know they were creating Basketball Night in America, but here we
think about what NBC is really buying here. They just secured NBA broadcasting rights starting with the 2025-26 season. They're also broadcasting WNBA games, and the one player who can bridge both audiences, who can bring casual fans into women's basketball and women's basketball fans into NBA coverage, just became their employee. This isn't about her basketball IQ, though that's obviously elite. This is about her ability to make people care.
Despite his limited role, simply having Jordan as part of the coverage created buzz. NBC is surely hoping Caitlin Clark's involvement will do the same. Of course, Caitlin Clark is expected to offer unique insights in assuming the analyst role for the first time, and her basketball IQ cannot be questioned. So the transition will be a seamless one for the Indiana Fever's star point guard. NBC will also have WNBA coverage for the upcoming 2026 season, so Caitlin Clark will surely appear.
Sam Flood, NBC's executive producer, called her one of the most captivating players and dynamic scorers in basketball. Not in women's basketball, in basketball, period. And that phrasing matters music, because it signals how NBC plans to position her. She's not being presented as a novelty or diversity hire. She's being presented as someone who understands the game at the highest level and can communicate that to viewers. But here's where it gets complicated. Caitlin Clark's injury ended her 2025 season in July. The 2026 WNBA season is supposed to start in May. That's a 10-month gap, assuming there even is a 2026 season. And during that gap, she's staying visible, staying relevant, and staying paid through endorsements. USA Basketball, and now this NBC deal. Meanwhile, other WNBA players are watching their off-season income opportunities remain limited.
Over here, this is the official from NBC Sports, the press release. And it basically does say the same thing. However, Caitlin Clark is going to join the studio team of Maria Taylor. She also hosts Football Night in America with Chris Sims and Mike Florio, Rodney Harrison, Tony Dungy, and Jason Garrett. Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady for pregame comment.
The CBA negotiations are going to be brutal. Players want higher salaries, better travel conditions, expanded rosters, and a bigger cut of revenue. Owners are going to point to attendance figures and television ratings and argue that most of that growth is concentrated around a handful of stars, and Caitlin Clark is Exhibit A in that argument. The Indiana Fever went from afterthought to must-see television in one season because of her. NBC knows it, ESPN knows it, and every team owner in the league knows it. So, when NBC announces they're putting her on their flagship basketball show before she's played a single game as a professional analyst, they're making a bet. They're betting that her name recognition and fan loyalty translates across sports. They're betting that people who tuned in to watch her play will tune in to hear her talk. And they're betting that her presence legitimizes their basketball coverage in a way that matters to advertisers.
That's very interesting. By the way, you can watch these online at Peacock, on the Peacock app, which is NBC's official app out there. And I've got it because, well, there's some decent stuff on Peacock. There's movies. There's a couple of old series I watch on there. And WWE Saturday Night Main Event is on
there. Now, let's talk about what this means for her positioning during CBA negotiations. The WNBA Players Association has to present a united front if they want leverage against the owners. But Caitlin Clark just demonstrated that she has options that don't depend on the WNBA season happening. She can make money through media. She can make money through USA Basketball. She can make money through endorsements. And if the Players Union decides to hold out for a better deal, she's not facing the same financial pressure that most players would face. That doesn't mean she's going to cross a picket line or undermine the union, but it does mean her incentives are different. She's already secured generational wealth through her Nike deal. She's already got mainstream visibility that transcends the WNBA. And now she's got a media career that's launching while she's still in her early 20s. The question becomes, how hard is she willing to fight for CBA improvements that benefit the middle and bottom of WNBA rosters when she's already operating in a completely different economic reality?
This is interesting. You notice ESPN did not jump in. You know, I don't see anything from USA Network on here. I mean, pretty safe to say they wasn't going to put her on a panel with Elle Duncan, I wouldn't think. Who knows? I mean, you never know with media outlets.
Now, let's address the elephant in the room. ESPN didn't make this hire. USA Network didn't make this hire. Turner didn't make this hire. NBC did. And that's significant because ESPN has been the primary broadcaster of WNBA games for years. They've invested heavily in women's basketball coverage. They've got established analysts and commentators who cover the league. And yet, when the opportunity came to bring Caitlin Clark into their basketball programming, they either didn't make a competitive offer or she chose NBC. Anyway, that tells you something about how she's thinking about her media career. ESPN is the establishment. They're where you go if you want to be taken seriously as a sports analyst. But NBC is the insurgent in basketball broadcasting. They just won NBA rights after being out of the game for years. They're building their basketball identity from scratch. And being part of that build, being there at the launch of Basketball Night in America, gives Caitlin Clark ownership over the brand in a way that joining an established ESPN program wouldn't. Plus, there's the Peacock factor. NBC's streaming platform is where they're putting a lot of their premium content, including exclusive NFL games. If Basketball Night in America becomes a flagship property on Peacock, and Caitlin Clark is part of that from day one, she's positioning herself at the center of how younger audiences consume sports media. That's forward thinking in a way that joining ESPN's traditional broadcast model isn't. But here's the risk. If the WNBA season does get delayed or canceled due to CBA negotiations and Caitlin Clark is on television every week talking about NBA basketball, some fans are going to see that as a betrayal. They're going to argue that she should be using her platform to advocate for WNBA players, not building her personal brand on the backs of male athletes. And that criticism might not be fair, but it's definitely coming. The reality is more complicated. Caitlin Clark talking about basketball on NBC keeps basketball in the conversation. It keeps her name in front of casual sports fans. And when the WNBA season does eventually start, whether that's May 2026 or later, she's going to bring some of those viewers with her back to women's music basketball. That's the optimistic view. The pessimistic view is that she's going to become primarily known as an NBA analyst who used to play in the WNBA, and the women's game loses its biggest star to media before she even hits her prime. NBC is betting on the optimistic view. They're betting that her WNBA career and her media career can coexist and reinforce each other. They're betting that fans will tune in to watch her analyze NBA games, and then tune in to watch her play WNBA games, creating a virtuous cycle of attention that benefits everyone. And they're betting that her basketball knowledge translates across both leagues in a way that makes her valuable as an analyst, regardless of which game she's covering. The February 1st debut is going to be crucial. Lakers versus Knicks at Madison Square Garden is about as high profile as NBA regular season games get. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, potentially Jalen Brunson if he's healthy. The basketball world is going to be watching to see how Caitlin Clark handles that spotlight. And if she delivers insights that make people think differently about what they're watching, this becomes a massive win for everyone involved. But if she's nervous or generic or clearly out of her depth sitting next to Carmelo and Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady, it's going to feed a narrative that she's not ready for this level of media exposure. And that narrative would be unfair, because nobody is truly ready for their first time on national television, analyzing a sport they don't play professionally. But fair or not, that's the standard she's going to be held to. Here's what makes this whole situation fascinating from a business perspective. The WNBA is in the middle of an identity crisis. Is it a niche product that serves a dedicated fan base and accepts limited mainstream appeal? Or is it a growth property that can compete for casual sports fans' attention alongside the NBA, NFL, and MLB? And the answer to that question determines everything about CBA negotiations, because it determines how much revenue owners can realistically expect to generate. Caitlin Clark's existence forces the growth narrative. Her rookie season brought unprecedented attention to the WNBA. Attendance doubled in some markets. Television ratings hit records. Merchandise sales exploded. And now she's taking that star power and extending it into the offseason through media work. That's exactly what the league needs if it wants to be seen as a major sports property rather than a summer curiosity. But it also creates tension music, because that level of star power concentration makes other players feel undervalued. If Caitlin Clark is the reason NBC is investing in WNBA coverage, if she's the reason attendance is up and ratings are up, then shouldn't she be compensated differently than players who don't move those need? And if you say yes to that question, you're undermining the collective bargaining structure that protects players who aren't superstars. The NBA dealt with this tension decades ago when Michael Jordan's earning potential vastly exceeded what the salary cap allowed. They created exceptions and loopholes and endorsement opportunities that let him get paid while maintaining the fiction of a level playing field. The WNBA is going to have to figure out its own version of that solution because Caitlin Clark's market value is already operating in a different universe than the league's pay structure can accommodate. So when you watch her debut on NBC on February 1st, you're not just watching a basketball player try her hand at analysis. You're watching the future of women's basketball economics play out in real time. You're watching a test case for whether WNBA stars can build mainstream media careers while still playing. And you're watching NBC make a bet that the Caitlin Clark phenomenon is sustainable, expandable, and valuable enough to build programming around. The question is whether she can deliver, whether she can sit at that desk with NBA legends and provide insights that justify her presence, whether she can handle the pressure of representing women's basketball every time she opens her mouth, whether she can balance being an active WNBA player with being an NBA analyst without alienating fans of either league. My guess, she's going to be fine. She's handled pressure her entire life. She's been the story, the controversy, the focal point since high. She's dealt with defenders trying to hurt her, fans criticizing every decision, media scrutinizing every word. Sitting at a desk talking about basketball is easy compared to what she's already survived. And if NBC is smart, they'll let her be herself. Let her talk about the game the way she sees it. Let her bring the perspective of someone who's actually playing at an elite level right now. Don't try to make her sound like everyone else because that's what makes this hire potentially brilliant. Caitlin Clark doesn't think about basketball the way Carmelo Anthony thinks about basketball. She doesn't see the game the way Vince Carter sees it. She's got a different perspective shaped by playing in a different league with different rules and different expectation. And if NBC lets that perspective come through, if they let her challenge conventional wisdom and offer